Welcome back, everyone, to the Monmouth Moms podcast, sponsored by Jenkinson's Boardwalk. We are in April 2023, which is crazy. I am definitely one of those moms. I think I'm just going to come to terms with it, that I am never the mom that has A, organized anything to do for spring break, B, even knows that spring, like, I'm the mom that's like, when is spring break? When is my daughter off? And like 3 weeks prior. And then I'm like, okay, it's either the week before Easter, the week after, this week, it's the week after. Nothing planned, probably have to work half of it. Like I know I'm not alone, but I'm not the mom that we don't usually ever go away for spring break. We'll go away in the summer, we'll go away like different times of the year. But and it's usually right now in our lives, it's actually dictated by our daughter's travel softball schedule and where we're traveling for competitions and stuff. But I cannot believe that it's April, and I can't believe that summer is like around the corner. Just like, I don't know. I think because winter just flew this year, mostly because the weather was just so mild, which was nice. But it's just been a whirlwind, and I feel like every day just goes faster and faster. But we're here, and thank you so much to our guest today, Kucich Brady from 80 Nutrition. Thanks so much for joining. A mouthful.
Yeah, glad to be here.
You are, tell me where you're from.
I'm originally from northern New Jersey.
Okay.
But presently living in Fairhaven for the past 10 years.
And what part of northern New Jersey?
Bergen County.
Okay.
Wyckoff.
Okay. We have a Bergen County Moms, the Bergen Moms Network also up there. So I actually grew, when I was little, I lived in Leonia, Teaneck, that area.
It's not too far.
And then we moved to down here when I was like 5, I think. So I know a little bit, but not too much.
Moms are everywhere.
Moms are
yeah,
everywhere.
I haven't been back much since college.
Oh, okay.
I did the stint in New York City for 15 years and then transported the kids here.
So where did you go to school?
I went to Franklin and Marshall undergrad.
Okay.
Then I got a master's degree at the London School of Economics in London. And then I moved back, and when I went back to school for nutrition, I went to Tufts.
Oh, interesting. So did you always have an interest in nutrition? So you went to school for economics?
No, I actually always had an interest in helping people feel better.
Okay.
Whatever that meant. And so I was pre-med for the first half of college. I had these lofty dreams to become a doctor, and it was hard. Franklin and Marshall's a tough academic school, and I halfway through was kind of burnt out. And I really wanted to study abroad with all my friends and be in a sorority and do the things that other kids were doing, having the college experience. And so I kind of cut off my nose to spite my face and said to my parents, I don't want this anymore. You want this for me. I want something different. I want to travel the world. I want to major in international relations. So I did like a radical change.
Wow.
And I went to Germany. I was in Germany for half a year, and then I moved home for senior year, and then I moved back to London to get a degree in international relations, and came back and started working in New York.
Wow.
But it was right around that time that I was having some really big health problems.
Okay.
That weren't not necessarily diagnoses, not like medical conditions as much as just things were going wrong in my body. And I had gone to college on 6 different medications. There was something to wake me up, something to put me to sleep, something to help with, I was put on birth control before I was even sexually active. There was a lot of things.
Right.
And a lot of women can identify with this story, especially women in the 90s. And then, I had a lot of digestive problems, and I was eating the fat-free world and living on fat-free frozen yogurt. And ultra-processed food and, pounding the fat-free marinara and the pasta, and it was all this stuff, and I felt terrible. So as I, started my career in New York City, I also went on this quest to start feeling better. And there weren't people like me. There were medical doctors who looked at my blood work and said, apart from having some autoimmune markers, like you're fine.
And they're probably, you're young. You appear, all of the levels are, checking each box.
Right,
so,
you're fine. Maybe it's in your head. Maybe and so but I knew it wasn't, and I knew that I had dealt with these problems since I'd been like a younger teenager. And so I went on this radical quest to change my own health without any guidance or supervision.
Right.
And I fell in with a group of raw foodists in the East Village, and that was it. And I went on this radical health transformation.
That's so interesting. So what year was that? That was
like 1998. 9
okay.
about that.
So I follow, and I've always admired Bethany Frankel, and people either love her or hate her. I've always admired her career. I followed her from, I guess, at least 15 years ago.
Very hardworking.
Yeah, and she's written lots of books, especially on nutrition in the early stages of her career. So when I was in my younger 20s, and I was kind of struggling with my own kind of, not weight gain, but like I was always very thin. I had a very high metabolism, and I ate terribly in high school. Like I worked at Outback in Middletown. Shout out, because they're still there.
They are.
And we ate cheese fries and like prime rib for it was disgusting. Right. How badly we ate. I still love those foods, but anyway, after I had my son, like I obviously wasn't like, I didn't have the same body that I did. Right. Didn't go back. And I remember like reaching for a lot of her books, and she talks a little bit about that time where very similar, where it was a lot of like low fat, and she was struggling with her own, not being able to manage the ideal, weight that she wanted to be in. And it was that raw food movement, and very similar that.
And I threw my cards in with that lot. And I'll say a lot of my problems were related to, I have a neuromuscular pain disorder. I had some things that were problems. I had a lot of inflammation, a lot of headaches, a lot of GI stress, but I was otherwise living a very normal life. I was living in New York City. I was in my early 20s. I was working all day and partying at night. I wasn't sickly. I just never felt great. Yeah. I just was unwell. And within a couple of months of this radical change, I felt amazing. Things really shifted for me, and I was really on a high. They always say, like, how does someone know you're on the radical diet? Well, you're going to tell them. And I did. I told everyone in the world, and I judged everyone. And family holidays became a challenge for a couple of years as my mother tried to figure out what we made at Thanksgiving. Right. But in the end, I started feeling terrible again. And I realized I had become nutrient deficient. In this quest to cut everything out, I still didn't really know what I was doing. Right. And so that really informed my career path, because I thought, like, I'm onto something, but I don't know what I'm onto. And there's really not a lot of support for me, in the medical community. I mean, doctors don't study nutrition. Right. Nowadays, there's a very small, module of nutrition training in med school, if there is at all. Yep. And they've done these entrance and exit interviews with medical students, and they say, going in, they say nutrition is so important to health. And on the exit side, they come out and say, yeah, it's not as important as we thought, because they've learned a modality which is treating and not preventive care. Yeah. And so, there wasn't a tremendous amount of information for me. And think about it, this was a time where there wasn't even much internet, like, to be honest. Yep. Like, I didn't use the internet in college. Right. Like, I tell my kids that they feel like I'm 100 years old. Yeah, I was the same way pretty much. I mean, I think MySpace was starting to become like more popular at the time, but we weren't like glued to anything. Well, there weren't these, like, now it's like if we want to look for something, they have to have a web page. Right. Right, and they have to have something. We have to be able to see them. It's not just like, if you pull up something with just a single listing, you're like, nah, like they can't be legitimate. So at the time, though, we didn't have that. So it was, who do you know, or what books can you buy? And so while I was working, I went back to school. First, I became a health supportive chef, because I thought if I knew how to cook the foods and I really understood the foods, then I could make change. So I went to 2 different culinary schools, in Natural Gourmet and the Institute for Culinary Education, and became a health supportive chef. And what was your goal in mind at that time? Was it what you're doing now, or not really? No, it was like, this was just like sort of like a little seedling. I started a baby food business. Oh. And I started a business that a lot of people in Manhattan were having meals delivered to their homes. They were doing like the Zone diet and things, and you'd open your front door of your apartment and you'd have a little bag full of your food for the day. So I did the food for the kids, for the babies. A lot of homemade baby food, a lot of homemade kid food, because at the time, now we have all these squeezy pouches and such. That stuff hadn't really come to market yet. Right. So I started, that was my initial goal. It was called Little Apples. Oh. And but I realized as I was doing that and working privately with clients and cooking privately for clients, and I started working with people, there were some cancer survivors, there were some diabetics, and science told me, the sciences I had taken in college told me, some of the story, that I kind of understood how their bodies were working. But then I realized I didn't know enough to actually make change, to make change with them, to give them advice, to help. And so I decided the next step was to go back to school for real. Right. And I did that part-time until I quit my job and did it full-time. Wow. And so I now, I gained a nutrition certification from Tufts, and then needed to, figure out what I was doing and where I was going. And at the time, I lived in New York City. I had small kids. One of my children was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, wow.
So he's a survivor. He's a 13-year survivor now.
Oh, thank God.
But that took a bit of time out of my career path, of course.
Right.
And then I was constantly looking for holistic and health supportive, all of these programs that did more of what I thought they should for the body, and waiting for them to kind of happen. So I was devouring the information that came out and doing certain trainings until holistic health became a thing, and then integrative nutrition, functional medicine, nutrition, like those, they started getting names. These things started taking roots, these philosophies and how we take care of our body. They grew legs, they took root, and then they became things that you could be certified in. Right. Versus just being, I'm a alternative practitioner, which can be really legitimate, but can also be quackery or really shady.
Right. What's that like being a mom in the city of young children? Cooking for them, it's not as easy to obviously run to the grocery store depending on the neighborhood that you live in. Did you rely on a lot of takeout? Like, how did you?
So we were really fortunate that we lived across the street from a Whole Foods.
Oh, that was
so
a different
like
story.
if we were going to have resources there, that also, what I did find in the city was that I could have anything delivered.
Right.
But we lived in like lower Manhattan, Tribeca, North Battery Park City, and so everything I wanted was there. Right. It was actually super convenient. The hardest part was pushing a double stroller with a kid on the back through the aisles.
Okay.
And them not like pulling things off the shelves as they went.
I know.
But no, I didn't rely on a lot of processed foods because I thought everything, or a lot of delivery, because everything was really there.
Okay.
It's harder here.
Yeah, it is hard here. Yeah.
It's a lot harder here when you run out of something and you don't have the right store you want to go to, or that your closest grocery store isn't going to have the products you want, or especially meat.
It's so true. I go to one store for meat, poultry. I go to one store for like some of the cereals. I go to Costco for like obviously the bigger items. But and then you get reliant on a certain ingredient, and it's very annoying actually, like having to go to all of the stores. I mean, I'm not one that Instacarts a lot of things. I maybe should, but I'm just like, it's the one time.
I started Instacarting a couple of years ago.
Did you? And is it a game changer for you?
It is a game changer for me, but it's really, really expensive.
It's so expensive.
And I can't, like, between the delivery fee and the service fee, and now at the end, then they have you add a tip to the driver. And look, I want to support the drivers. They're the ones doing the work, 100%. Yeah. But between the service fee and the delivery, and it goes up based on how much you spend on your groceries.
Yeah.
So groceries for a family of 6 is, right now, especially with the economy the way it is, it's through the roof. So
we're spending like double what we used to.
And I have teenage boys.
Yeah.
So the amount of food that's getting eaten in my home is, I don't want to feed them. I want to feed them good food. Right. I certainly don't want to sacrifice on the quality of the food, but it's brutal.
Yeah, no, it really is. We should have a whole topic just on how to grocery shop the right way. So you were in the city until how long?
About 10 years ago.
Okay. And then what made you move out here?
Well, my eldest was ready for kindergarten.
Okay.
And we were looking at preschools and trying to figure out what to do. And the preschool I wanted him to go to was across town, and there was not even a close way to get there. Oh. And we were just trying to figure it out. And then we started looking at the finances and thinking, this is, for us, for our family at the time, this is absurd.
For just the amount that it would cost
for the amount that it would cost for kindergarten, getting him the stress of getting him across town, being in an apartment. And we had a lovely apartment. Mm-hmm. I mean, I loved living in New York City.
You did.
For me. Mm-hmm. There was everything that I wanted there.
Right.
But also with a bunch of boys, taking them outside to play and having the accessibility. I did not, like, as hard as it was for me to make that decision to leave, once we decided to be in Monmouth County, we decided to be here, I fell in love with this place. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and putting them in and out of the car is the easiest thing in the world.
Yes.
Like, I definitely became very spoiled about, like, they don't like to wear coats. Like, I don't care if you're not wearing a coat.
Right.
You're getting into the car. I'm just the ease and the convenience.
There's a lot of advantages to Monmouth County. You're, on a lucky day, depending on where you're going, you could be 45 minutes outside of the city, if there's no traffic.
Right,
but,
right.
And, you have the hiking, you have the beaches, you have shopping, you have great schools.
We're 10 minutes from the beach with no traffic.
Yeah.
And I think just to be that close to, even if we're not at the beach, I mean, I haven't been to the beach in at least a month and a half.
Right.
But just knowing it's there and being there and seeing expanse. One of the problems I had with living up north as a, even when I was deciding, was that it felt landlocked.
Yes.
It just kind of felt like you were in the suburbs, and this is different. This is a much different feel, being able to go for a hike. As you were saying, I love Hartshorn.
Yes.
And just to, I'm not far from Seabright, so just being able to cross the bridge and be in Seabright, whether it's off season and bring the dogs, or just knowing, like with my kids, even if we want a half a day at the beach, or we want 2 hours at the beach, I can toss them in the car and I can say to them, you have no idea how lucky you are to be, most kids, kids don't have any idea how fortunate they are to be so close to the beach, and even just to be able to be outside in a safe, great environment.
Oh, sure, without a doubt. No, my husband's always jokes that I'll never leave Monmouth County, because I've been here since I was 7, and I said, you'll never leave, and I'm like, why would we want to leave?
Right. My kids talk about it now. They say, well, when I'm out of college, when I grow up and I have a family and I live here, and I'm like, that's so heartwarming. Partially because where I was initially, I was kind of like, I can't wait to get out of this place.
Yes.
I can't wait for life to start. My kids are like, well, when we come back here, so I can envision, even as they're older, I can envision them, wanting to come home and bring their friends home when they come from college, or wanting to bring
it's a fun place to
a
be.
Significant other, or wanting to have their families here and bring their kids down to the beach. And it makes me really happy that we have a place that's so awesome, but also a place where they've put their roots down.
Oh, for sure, without a doubt. So you moved here to Fairhaven 10 years ago, and you started 80 Nutrition then, or did that come later?
Well, it's a bit of a convoluted story. I moved here and got divorced.
Okay.
I kind of moved here in the middle of a divorce.
Right.
I started over with 3 little kids.
Okay.
We moved to Rumson. We were building a house in Rumson, and then I started my life over. So 80 Nutrition really was born about. It'll be 8 years.
Okay.
I've been doing this work in different iterations for about 15 years. Mm-hmm. A little bit more than 15 years. But 80 as it exists, I started here. I started in Monmouth County. Mm-hmm. So it's unique to New Jersey. We've lived in our house in Fairhaven for 6, so it was about 2 years before.
Okay.
And it was really designed. I wanted a practice that was a little bit different from what I did in New York. I didn't want to work in a commercial kitchen anymore. Mm-hmm. I realized that it just took too much time away from my family.
Okay.
And I wanted to effect more change than just saying eat this. I wanted to explain to people why we eat this and how this helps you and what it does. And as my business evolved, it started to be, because my focus had been helping kids, and part of it was because I was a mom and I had seen this need for no baby food, but also it also became working with the moms and became talking to the moms and seeing a lot of the times that the moms were underserved. Even these moms who have wonderful lives and all the resources in the world put themselves last.
Yes.
And so my business really morphed, my nutrition business really morphed into helping to support the mothers, not just as they fed their kids or helped their kids get ready for spring athletic season, but as the moms started taking care of themselves.
Right. So 80 Nutrition, you do a few different things throughout the year, but the gist of your business is what?
So I'm a functional medicine nutrition. I'm a board-certified functional medicine nutritionist. So the training in nutrition plus the training in integrative and functional medicine nutrition.
Right.
Functional medicine is a philosophy, and it's not it's not a specialty like cardiology or endocrinology. It's a philosophy with how we look at clients and patients.
Okay.
So as a functional medicine nutritionist, I look at all people uniquely, right? You can't flip over a bottle of vitamins and say all women 18 to 55 take 2. Right? Apart from the way how old we are, the lifestyle that we've had, our genetics that we bring, things we bring to the table, what we can absorb and metabolize based on toxins we've encountered in our lives, and just the way our bodies are built, we all have slightly different needs.
Right.
And so my practice is a functional medicine nutrition practice, meaning we look at each person as a whole and as an individual. We look for symptoms of imbalance. Like a lot of times when you go to see a doctor and you say something feels off, and then they run your labs and your markers are fine, and they say you're normal, and you say but something still feels off. We call that the gray area.
Yes.
And I do a lot of work in the gray for people who don't have. I'm not an MD. I don't diagnose and treat people. I don't ever pretend to do that. But there's a lot that we can accomplish and a lot that we can change in people's health and body composition and life by looking at their nutrition, looking at their absorption, looking at all their lifestyle factors.
Right.
And in my field, we don't just look at what you eat. We're looking at what do you eat, what are your relationships, how do you exercise, how do you sleep, what are your supplements, what's your community at large, what's your mental attitude. We look at the whole picture and not just, eat this salad with grilled chicken for lunch because that's healthier than eating an Italian sub.
Right.
So my practice in general is twofold. I work with individuals and do a lot of private client work. And then I work in group programs. And the group programs run seasonally. So our most famous one is the Real Food Reset, which is a 2-week anti-inflammatory eating protocol. Started years ago as the idea of running a detox or a cleanse, but without the misinformation that detoxes and cleanses offer people. You know, that you have to starve yourself, or that you have to work out super hard, or sit in a sauna for hours, or drink only juices. But with like, how do you do this for 2 weeks? How do you do something sustainable for 2 weeks that changes your body, changes your health from the inside out, but also makes you feel really good?
Right.
Where you're not like, oh, day 2 of this and my head is pounding, and I have an almond milk left to drink tonight,
right.
even though I'm starving, and I'll just cry myself to sleep because I feel hungry and terrible.
Yeah.
No, it's how do I feed my family, and how do I eat in a way that reduces inflammation, supports my body, gives me the energy to get out of bed, puts me in a better mood, gives me a better sex drive. How do I do all of these things, but with food and not with this restrictive starvation pattern? So the Real Food Reset was born. It's really successful. We run it 3 times a year. It's usually like our next one is the end of May, so it'll be after Mother's Day. I try to time it so that it doesn't conflict with very important days for moms.
Okay.
You know, because who wants to be doing that when you also want to be at Mother's Day brunch? Actually, I don't want to be at Mother's Day brunch.
Me either.
On Mother's Day, I want to be like,
at a spa.
I do not want to have to be mothering. Like I'd love to have my kids around me, and I have 4 of them, so I love to have them around, but I do not want to have to like force them into dress clothes and make them like sit through a meal that I will only have to hear about how miserable they are.
My mom and I do that every year. We kind of like ditch everyone and we go and like either we'll go have wine somewhere or we'll go. This year I think we're going to do the spa, but we've always like been a big advocate for like, this is Mother's Day.
Right.
Like we do with a month. Like we have to be with you all.
Right. And we love you and you're great. But like today's the day that we're supposed to be honored for all the work we do for you, not having to do more work for you.
Yes, I know.
So like fathers like get the day
they
off.
get the day. They go golfing. I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
I'm like, I get this day too. The reset starts. The reset starts after Mother's Day so that everybody can enjoy their Mother's Day, and then it runs to Memorial Day, which is right around the time that we're looking at like bare shoulders and bare legs, and for some people bare midriffs, and they want to be feeling better. It's not a quick fix. It's not an all or nothing. It's not like once you do this, now you're stuck. You have to eat this way for the rest of your life. It's a reset.
Right.
And it's a very, very healthy way to do the reset. So we do this at the end of May. We do it after the summer, right after everybody goes back to school, because in Monmouth County, all summer is basically beach summer.
Right.
And we all kind of let go, and we travel and we do fun things, and then we want to rein it in. And then we run another one at the beginning of the new year.
Okay.
When it's time to like put the sugar cookies away and step away from, the social and get back to ourselves. And none of it is restrictive or dramatic. I'm really a big believer in no deprivation.
I love that. So my diet, I'd say it's very balanced, but I'm very much, some weeks I'm going to Blanche Shallot and grabbing salads or making my own
salad.
Yeah, who doesn't? Oh my gosh, the best salads. Or I'll like grab some salads from hers, and then I'll make chicken and like kind of, throughout the week make lunches and stuff like that. Or I'm like eating potato chips and chocolate like all week long.
You're not alone.
Like literally running through, if you're just kind of in the weeds of doing, managing other things, usually work related stuff, I'm kind of just like grabbing stuff from the pantry, like just to not be like gnawing at my stomach because I'm starving.
Right.
And there's no in between. I'm very much, but I'm not like extreme. I'm very balanced that way where like I just kind of eat. If I notice like my skin's looking crappy or I'm run down or I'm exhausted or whatever, I'll make sure I go to bed earlier, or I'll, just like I said, like grab some, incorporate more vegetables or something just to see. But it's kind of, you're always, I don't know if it's the right word is experimenting, but you're always trying to do better, right? Trying to like fuel your body better, and like really, as I've gotten older, like I mentioned earlier, I lived on cheese fries and nachos, and we went to Houlihan's for buffalo chicken fingers. Like most of my early 20s, that's kind of what I lived on, and I love that food. Like I love all food. I'm a big foodie, but like,
I am also a big foodie.
Yeah.
People think that I'm not.
Right.
People think that my dinner is like kale and carrots.
Right. And it doesn't have to be that way, but at the same time, as you get older, you just can't eat that way anymore, right? So, what does that look like for? And we talked a little bit about like people's genetic makeup, and I've heard, actually, I think we've talked about this before. You were telling me that, some women shouldn't have a lot of like edamame and like soy based on like kind of where, I guess, like where they're from and their cultural disposition? Like how does that work exactly?
There is some truth to that. Yeah. There's some truth to that. There's a little bit of truth to the blood sugar diet, to that as well. A lot of these diet philosophies came about based on a kernel of truth.
Interesting.
And then, they spun out into a lot more.
Right.
Where people are on crusades that are not necessarily at this point health supportive.
Okay, got it.
But there are, everyone's body is different. And that's what's like, I see this a lot with, like, to a great example is like the salad craze and the salad industry. There are people whose GI systems are just not in great shape. They don't really, again, sometimes they've rushed off to a doctor and they've had a colonoscopy and told they're fine. But they just have like gas and bloating with food and they don't feel great. But they force themselves to eat salads because our culture says salads are the best lunch. Salads are the healthy lunch. If you want to be healthy, if you want to lose weight, if you want to be virtuous in some way, there's so much virtue assigned to food, and we need to get away from that because there's no morality in food. For starters, like that's my baseline with everybody is there's no morality in food. Like you are not good if you eat a salad or bad if you eat cheese fries.
Yep.
You just do. And we have to, with nutrition and we have to realize a couple of things before I even answer your question.
Sure.
We have to realize that, we have to eat to stay alive. And so it's not one of these things like drinking or gambling or, staying up all night that we can decide to never do again. And so eating is such a personal thing for people because our eating is to survive, but it's also really wrapped up in our emotions. It's wrapped up in our social lives and our choices and family and what our family traditions are. And it can be really hard to like extricate different, yourself and really sort out those pieces because eating isn't just this thing you do to live. Like people can say, oh, I'm not drinking for a month. Well, you're not going to say I'm not eating for a month or I'm not, And so it's hard. Most people by the time they reach adulthood too really have these, ingrained beliefs about what to eat and how to eat. And a lot of the work that I do in our group program especially is separating that. Those pieces out about what I should and what I shouldn't eat and what I can and what I can't and what's good or bad.
Right.
I always say like you're a bad person if you kick your dog. You are not a bad person if you eat nachos.
Right.
Nachos are not necessarily health supportive. You don't think they're health supportive. And you're not eating them because you think, wow, this is really good for my body. You're eating them because you want them. And what a great way to enjoy them is when you order them and you're like, it's so great to say like, I'm eating these nachos. I love these nachos. These are delicious for what they're worth. We know they don't have any real nutritional value. And I'm probably going to maybe feel sick later because it's going to be hard to digest. But I'm enjoying them. I'm enjoying every bite that I have.
Right.
Versus eating, I don't know why I'm eating this. I shouldn't be eating this. Oh, this is going to make me fat. Oh, the scale's going to be up tomorrow. Oh, and the whole time you're creating horrible energy around your food.
Yeah.
And you waste that meal. You've actually had something that you love to eat, but instead you have completely wasted that meal.
And it's very mental too. Actually, I think one of the books I read early on was like a question that you ask yourself, is this going to get any better, right? Have you enjoyed it? If you keep eating it, are you just eating it because it's like you're just trying to stuff yourself? Is it going to, like you have to kind of almost give yourself like a mental check, like, okay, like this was good and this is just food.
That's very smart. Okay, so yes,
right.
That is one thing. I always say food is fuel and not therapy.
Right.
Like at some point, people will also say like, well, I've blown it. Like I had this. I was so good all week, and I ate very clean, and then I blew it in on my dinner. So now I'm off the rails.
Right.
And that's another thing where I spend so much time on food education and mindset. It's not just like eat the kale because it's good for you and don't eat the fries because they're bad for you. As much as it is, what percentage of your week is food that supports your health, and where are your indulgences?
Right.
So like for me, I hate the word cheat. I hate people say, well, I had a cheat day. Like you're not cheating on your diet. Again, you have to eat to live.
Right.
So you're maybe making some choices that aren't the best for you in that moment, but you're making that, no one's forcing the food down your throat.
Right.
And the next choice you make could be a different choice.
Yeah.
And so before we even get away from like some women's bodies and what they can handle and can't handle, I always start with like this understanding of like for every single person, food is a necessity, but it's also a choice. And what we put in our mouths and what we put in our bodies, like sometimes we know they don't agree with us and we eat them in spite of that.
Right.
And we eat them either because we love it or because we don't know what else to choose. And that's where we get back to the salad analogy. I have a one client who said, well, every week I eat this Brussels sprout salad, but it makes me so, but like I'm so sick. I'm so bloated, it's raw Brussels sprouts. And I said, well, maybe that's the problem. It's not that you can't eat vegetables. It's that you're eating a raw vegetable that's really, really has a ton of fiber in it, and it's probably causing digestive problems for you. What if you cooked those vegetables? What if when your GI system's a little bit off, you didn't have a raw salad for lunch? What if you had vegetables? What if you had chicken soup with vegetables in it? And she called me and was like, "This is a game changer. Like, I never once thought that the raw vegetables for me could be a problem right now."
Right.
And it's just a simple way of looking at it. And that's sometimes where the idea of something that's good for you, like kale is only good for you if you can digest it. If you can't digest it, you end up bloated and constipated and feeling terrible.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, kale is very fibrous. Like cellulose needs to be, it's fiber. It needs to be digested. We need water. We need certain things in our system, and sometimes we can eat too much of a good thing.
Right.
And not be able to, it takes a while to break it down.
Yeah.
So even before we look at like people's genetics, like yes, so for soy, there are some women that soy is not great for based on, well, if we were to look at blood types, paleolithically, A positives would be soy eaters. But even then, soy does a lot to affect our estrogen balance.
Okay.
And there are some women who, and boys and men who just really don't need it, that it doesn't serve a lot of purpose for.
Interesting.
There are some women based on their hormone balance where it could be a little bit more useful. When it comes to all soy, I always say much soy that we eat is processed. Most tofu that we eat is processed.
Interesting.
Things that are not processed or better for you, well, edamame, of course, are not processed if you're eating them as whole bean, but fermented soy. Fermented soy is actually your most health supportive.
Oh.
So it's really like miso or tempeh. So when we start talking about particular products, I give people information about why that particular thing is more useful for their body and what is more health supportive about this than that.
Okay.
I don't necessarily believe in doing eat this, not that, without an explanation.
How much should you listen to your body when you're craving something, whether it's on the healthier side or not, nutrient dense or not?
As I pull this thing off. Well, it's interesting. There's two things. One is asking your body if you're actually hungry. And then I'll also talk to you about saying, when you're saying how much is enough, it's, I use a 3-bite rule when it comes to cravings, which I'll explain. But so the first step is when you're craving something is, am I really hungry? Is this a need for real food? Did I not eat enough in my last meal? Is it my actual mealtime now? Which should be 3.5 to 4 hours after you last ate, honestly. Right. Like for adult women, for all people, what we never learn, and we learn to feed ourselves, but we don't learn how to eat. We don't learn the right pattern of eating. We're just never taught this. It should be eating for blood sugar balance. And, I can go into more detail with that. But, so you have a craving. Am I really hungry? Is it my mealtime? Do I need real legitimate food right now? And this craving is just lingering there because my blood sugar is low.
Right.
And then it's, am I potentially nutrient deficient? Right? Like they always say a craving for chocolate really closely correlates to a need for magnesium.
Interesting.
So could I be slightly deficient in something? For women, do I have my period? Am I craving meat because I need more iron? That's entirely possible. But then, then you get to the next step, which is, okay, no, I'm not hungry. I'm not really hungry for a meal. But I'm having a craving for something. Should I satisfy that craving? And the answer really is, if you want to have that, you should have it versus having something else, right? Like, well, I want a couple of tortilla chips, but I'm not going to have them, so I'm going to have celery sticks and carrot sticks, and I'm going to eat all the crudité off the platter. And guess what? I'm still going to return to those chips later, because I'm going to be unsatisfied. So instead, what I tell people is, I really want people to eat for when they eat. If they're paying attention to their health, eat within their eating windows. Eat within these hours. But if there's something that you want, have it with the understanding that you really only need 3 bites to satisfy a craving.
Okay.
A lot of times I use this in relation to ice cream. So, and moms, like most moms love ice cream. Do you love ice cream?
Oh, of course.
Yes, I love ice cream too. I don't eat it all the time, but I love it. Mint chocolate chip, hands down, my favorite. But it's this whole idea of like, my kids are having ice cream, I want ice cream, I shouldn't feel deprived, should I? And I always say, first of all, you never need more than a kiddie cup.
Right.
Like, we all get these big ice creams, and then as we get, a quarter of the way through, we're technically full of it, but we're still eating it because we bought it.
You don't want to waste it, right?
You don't want to waste it, and then how many times have you thought, I don't know why I'm still eating this? But you are, because it's in front of you. So for starters, you never need more than a kiddie cup. That is plenty of serving of ice cream. And I feel like that way about a lot of things. You never need more than a small handful of fries. You never need more than a small handful of chips if you're going to eat them. There's no reason you need to eat the whole plate. Like that's just way too much of everything for everybody.
Right.
No matter what your age. But, and if they're in front of us, we will eat them. But then with the kitty cup or with anything, it's 3 bites. Like science shows us again and again, it only takes 3 bites to satisfy a craving.
Right.
So savor it. Be so happy you have it. Don't feel guilt. Again, none of the I shouldn't be having this. This is bad for me. I'm ruining my diet. It's all over. I'm having this. I love it. I'm so excited to taste it. It tastes amazing. And you eat 3 bites. That's all that it takes to satisfy that craving. You should be completely done with that need for that food 3 bites later.
Yeah.
Whatever that treat is. Now, if you choose to continue eating it, that is your choice. Again, you choose what goes in your mouth. But there's nothing wrong with buying a small kitty cup of ice cream, having 3 bites, hell, having 4 bites just to make sure, and then throwing it away.
Right.
And you've still had it. You're still satisfied, but you're also not bloated and sick and feeling disgusting because you pumped yourself full of sugar.
Right.
My favorite ice cream is Nicholas Creamery.
Oh, me too.
I'm just going to shout out to them.
The best, yeah.
And it's so delicious and clean.
Yes.
So I generally don't eat it and feel terrible afterwards.
So true.
But I also still know that it's ice cream and that it's a sometimes food and a treat.
Right.
And I try to say this to women all the time. There's a lot of women struggle in the afternoon. Do you have afternoon struggles? Like 3 o'clock, you start to feel a crash?
I think it really depends. I'm very much like if I know that maybe we're going out to eat or something, like I can kind of like assemble my day based on like if I know that there's something that I want to eat. Like I love the lo mein at Bistro in Red Bank. I haven't had it in ages, but I've been craving it. So like that's like a really big meal. So I probably like won't eat like heavily. I won't have pancakes for breakfast or whatever. You know what I mean? So like I really try to like balance the day out. But yeah, I think that's kind of like how I look at most of how I operate, like my diet. But then some days you don't even know what the heck you're going to be eating.
Right,
and some days it's just like I have pizza for lunch and, you know, that for dinner. And then the next day you just kind of balance it out with like, you know, a cereal bowl or whatever.
I try to get people to look at, you know, to think about when our kids were little, you know, we would call the pediatrician and be like, they didn't eat. And he's like, it's you know, the course of a week. Like look at their food over the course of a week.
Right.
You know, look at the baby's intake over a course of a week. Okay, maybe this meal wasn't big, but maybe that meal will be bigger. Let's see how it goes. And I always found that really comforting. Yeah. And I think for adults, we don't do that for ourselves. So that's true. Another thing. We need to think about like, okay, like maybe I had a hamburger for lunch. Okay. Maybe dinner will be fish and veggies. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to start off with an egg white omelet. It's not this all or nothing where if I have, you know, I'm going to have lo mein, and so I'm either going to starve myself so that I can get ready for these noodles, or that now I feel so you know, now I know it was a big meal and that's heavy, so now I'm like I've thrown my chips in, and then tomorrow I'm either skipping breakfast to punish myself or I'm grabbing a muffin.
Yeah, but like there's like something in between. I've heard a few people mention how they look at their diet like a bank account, right?
Yes.
And they, you know, and that you're saving and kind of, but not really starvation and like, you know, eliminating things, but mostly just looking at it as like, you know, your body needing nutrients, but at the same time that you're not going to deprive yourself from what you like to eat.
I try to use, instead of this whole idea of cheats, where people are just like, I cheated last night. I use the term indulgences.
Okay.
So if we think about it, we eat, let's say, 28 times a week. If we're eating 4 times a day, we're give or take, we're eating 28 times a week.
Right.
Every one of those meals can't be indulgent. They can't always have something indulgent if you want to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. But we know that if you are 100% restrictive, you mutiny. I always say deprivation leads to mutiny. Yeah. You know, you can go 2 weeks, you can go 3 weeks. If you're doing a whole 30, you can go to 30, but the best day of the whole 30 is day 31.
Right.
Because you feel great, you did it, you know, you got the medal for achieving it, but now you can eat pizza again.
Right.
And you base it, and then it's, you know, no holds barred, like for most people, way back down the hill.
Right.
So I always say we look at it like 80%. Mm-hmm. And my business is called 80 not because of this, but coincidentally, I tell people that they should be, the sweet spot is 80%. Mm-hmm. If you really want to focus on losing body fat, maybe 90%. Okay. But it's an 80 to 90% focus on foods that are good for you, mm-hmm. foods that are nutrient dense, that are health supportive, that fuel your body, that build new cells. It's all about building new cells and making proper hormones. But then there's 10 to 20% wiggle room.
Right.
And what does that look like? That looks like 3 to 5 choices a week that are not health supportive.
Okay.
So that means, you know, wine with dinner. That means maybe a slice of pizza and salad for dinner. It doesn't just mean the salad.
Right.
You know, it means being able to have a dessert. It means being able to have something you like, but also within control.
Right.
Right. Looking at it like a bank account, saying I only have, let's say, 5 occasions throughout the week to have something that I consider indulgent. We don't consider cheating. That's really just part of your meal.
Right.
So what is that thing? What matters to me? I always said, what has the value? Like if you were to have $500 to go into a store, would you buy a bunch of little things that would all sit in your closet, or would you buy like 1 or 2 things that you would love, and that every time you wore, maybe even just one thing, every time you wore would look and feel, you'd feel amazing, and you'd just be so happy that you owned that one thing.
Yes.
Or would you waste it on a bunch of little trendy things?
Yeah, having Snickers all day, you know, and then this, and then have this, and then by the end of the day, it's, you know, it's all adds up, right?
Right. So. And people say things like, and a lot of it's thinking. A lot of it when it comes to food is really just taking a pause to think. So for some of my clients, I have this thing. It's called Should I Eat It? It's a PDF, but it used to be called the Donut Decision Helper. And, you know, I said, tack it up somewhere. Because for me, even though I've been doing this work for more than half my life now, I still get the cravings, or I still get the inclination to eat. I come from a very, very long line of emotional eaters.
Interesting.
You said you had a great fast metabolism as a kid. I did not.
Okay.
And I come from a family of people who eat when we're happy, we eat when we're sad, we eat when we're bored, we eat when it's nighttime, you know, we eat in celebration, we eat just because we walk through the kitchen and we grab a handful.
Okay.
And it definitely did not serve my health well, or, you know, my family members' health well, until I actually went to the school and sort of got them on the track, and now everybody's doing great. But coming from this long line, I still, when I'm upset or frustrated, my first inclination will be to go to the kitchen. Okay. Especially with COVID and working from home and being so close to home all the time, there's food everywhere. And I used to have nothing in my house, and now that I have 4 tween and teenage boys, I have a lot of things in the house that I would not normally choose or have, and that could be tempting. And so I find myself, and I go and I stop at the pantry, and I say to myself out loud, and it's pretty funny because, again, I've been doing this for so long that I still even have to do this, but I say to myself, you're not hungry. You're not hungry. Yeah. And it like sinks in, and I acknowledge that thought, and I sit with the discomfort of it, that I'm not hungry, and that whatever I'm grabbing isn't going to help me in the moment. And I take like a breath, and I'm like, you're right, I'm not hungry. And I like walk away, but it's something I still have to do to myself when a craving hits or when this need to eat happens. Right. And because it's not worth it. Because again, if I'm able to say, you know, my husband and I love to go, and we maybe do this once a month, maybe every 2 months. We go to Surf Barbecue in Rumson, and we eat the nachos. And we've still never been able to finish the nachos. But we go and we get the nachos, and it's a once in a while thing, and literally it's our whole meal. We don't get anything else. We just get the nachos, and again they're not health supportive, I know that, but they're delicious. Yeah. But would I rather pick all week long, or would I rather know that I'm having one meal that is going to be enjoyable, that's going to be, you know, quality time with my husband, and eating something that I really love? Yes. And so I try to steer people into that mindset of still being able to have it. It's not that you can't ever have it. Right. It's that there's that 10 to 20% window that's reserved for enjoyable, what we call sometimes foods. Okay. Whether it's ice cream, whether it's alcohol, whether it's whatever. That's your window, and you can have it within that window. It's when that starts to bleed into the time that we need to be healthy that you need to, you know, buckle up. Right. So there's a lot of moms that, you know, are probably listening and, you know, thinking about their own maybe diet that they were trying, or, you know, just kind of failed attempts at their own health goals. And there are also there's a lot of information out there, right? We are on Instagram constantly. We're looking at all kinds of people that maybe we want to look like, or that brings us down. And so much information, so many products, right? So much. One, what do you think about prebiotics, probiotics, symbiotics? Do you think that everyone should we be getting that just from our food? Do you think that everyone should be taking those supplements? How do you feel about that? Well, I'm a big believer in supplements, in the right supplements for the right people and for their bodies. Okay. So a lot of times people ask me to put out a supplement list. And part of the reason I don't do that is because not everybody needs the same things. Okay. That said, prebiotics mostly come from our food. They come from the fiber that we eat. Okay. And so if you're eating a diet rich in fiber, you're pretty much getting most of it. Got it. Sometimes people say it can come from resistant starch, so cold potatoes or cold rice. A lot of times that's a great prebiotic. Okay. And some companies make things that have prebiotics in them, like FOS or inulin. And that can be useful, but a lot of times people get some digestive distress from that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you get digestive distress from that, I encourage people to think about their actual gut health and not just the fact that their body is reacting to that. It doesn't mean that you can't handle fiber. It usually means something is off in your gut.
Got it.
And so that's a lot of the work that I do. People coming and saying, my digestion is off. How do we fix it? So in addition to learning about the food and learning about the choices, we're also, working on the body systems and trying to make sure that we're reducing inflammation and that we're speeding up proper digestion, or not speeding up, but improving digestion, making it more efficient.
Okay.
And so I am a fan of prebiotics. I am a fan of probiotics. It's also interesting to note that there's all different probiotics out there, and they all do different things. And too much of a good thing is too much. So I really encourage probiotic rotation. So when you're done with your bottle of probiotics, I usually recommend moving on to a different brand with a different strain.
So what about the quality of the brand, though? Because there's a lot out there.
So the quality matters so much. There's no oversight with supplements. I mean, the reality is that you and I could end this podcast, go over there and whip up our own supplement that nobody would look at. It could be made from anything. We could get the ingredients from anywhere, and then we could sell it.
Wow.
And it's a little crazy. So I work with supplement companies that are really at the top of their game. Most of them require documentation to be able to supply them. So I have distributorship relationships. They're not MLM relationships. These are companies, Orthomolecular, Designs for Health, Metagenics, some of the better supplement companies, and you have to be a practitioner.
Okay.
You create an account with them, and those are the types of supplements that I use with people. They're not crazy expensive. It's not that that's the barrier to entry. It's usually working with a practitioner that's able to get them.
Okay.
Because a lot of times the supplements that we see at Whole Foods and at certain health food stores, or just at Costco, are just we have even if they're big name brands, we have no idea where they've been. We have no idea how they've been transported or stored, if they've sat on a pallet in the sun, if they've been in cold temperatures. There's not a lot of quality control. And you're putting these things in your body, day and day out, and then you're seeing things again on social media. There's a lot of I think social media is so great for the way that it's able to unite people. Yeah. And I think it's great for really interesting content that people wouldn't see otherwise. Right. But we're so flooded right now. The market is inundated with sales. And with everybody, with so much noise of buy this product, buy that product. My two specialties I didn't even really mention, apart from autoimmune disorders, is female hormones. Okay. And so, again, it kind of translates into my working with adults and working with moms. Right. And I do so much work in female hormone balance and how we regulate our hormones, because, again, that's really the root of our health. And when people's bodies start to change in their later 30s into their 50s, and we go through transitions and perimenopause and menopause, it's all based on your hormones. We finally realize your hormones have been driving the bus the whole time. And by that I mean our metabolic hormones, our stress hormones, and our sex hormones, not just our sex hormones, but they all work together in concert. And a lot of times people will come to me and say, well, I started having these problems, but then I saw this product on Instagram, so I bought this. And then, well, I wasn't sure about this, but then I saw this influencer marketing this. Right. And then I saw that. And now people have spent a couple $100s on these products. Sometimes they're stuck in these auto-subscribe where they keep getting it because they forget to cancel it. And they don't really know if it's helping or not helping. And all it really takes is a session to go through and say, like, wow, now you're taking like 10 things you don't need. Like, these are the key supplements that will help you where you are. Right. And so when it comes to probiotics, prebiotics, any kind of products, or just supplements in general, I want people to take their time and very smartly choose the products they're using, because they can do more harm than good as well. Right. A lot of people misuse them because there's just really bad, there's some really great information out there, but there's a lot of really uninformed people posting content. It's so true. And what about exercise? Moving our body, critically important. Okay. Obviously. We tend to, as we get older, we tend to see changes in our body and think that exercise is the answer. And exercise is a part of the answer, but it's not the whole answer. Okay. And so I always tell people you can't outrun your fork. Right. So a lot of I see a lot of moms, a lot of clients say, like, well, my body's different since I had a baby, so now I go to the gym for 2 hours a day instead of 1. And this wasn't happening, so now I started this high intensity class, and we actually tend to overdo it. And then you're like starving. And then you're starving. And then you're overeating. And or you're skipping a meal, and then you're hangry. Right. And then and it's a pattern. So I want to say that as we get older, we should always be moving our bodies, people think I go to the gym for an hour and that's great, but the reality is that we sit or lay in bed for basically 23 hours a day. We get our 1 hour workout in, and then we lay down. And so that exercise we get in our 1 hour is basically about 5% of our daily calorie burn.
Wow.
But the other movement we do, like walking up and down the stairs, walking from a parking lot, grocery shopping, all those other things we do where we're moving our body can account for another 15% of our calorie burn.
I can't do the standing desk. The people that have the
I just bought a walking treadmill.
Yeah, and do you like it?
So I don't have the standing desk yet.
Okay.
So instead it's in my gym and I'm just walking on it until I get the standing desk, because I'm trying to figure out, am I coordinated enough?
Same. I don't think I would be. I'm not a coordinated person, so I don't. I see people on it, like on Instagram and stuff, and I'm like, that's so cool. I've actually been on many Zooms where there's someone on and they're walking, and I wouldn't be. I don't think I'd be able to type at the same time.
I'm not sure if I would either. I use a Peloton, and I have a tray, a Lucite tray that Peloton doesn't sell, but I bought through Amazon Off Market. That goes on top of your handlebar, so you can put your computer there.
Oh.
So sometimes I'll do the same thing, and I'll just ride for an hour or two. Not intensely riding. I'll just ride.
That I might do. That's a good idea.
Because at least I'm in one place and I can't trip over my foot.
I'm the person who bought the Peloton during COVID, and now I'm a runner, so I like to run outside.
I think I remember that about you.
Yeah, and I don't like. That's all I do. I don't go to the gym. I have we belong to a club where they have a gym, and I never use it. And I do like yoga, but I don't go as much as I enjoy it. And I always say I should go more, but not really for just to work out. It's more I just love the whole Zen part of it, and
cortisol balancing aspect of it.
But I don't do any weight training or anything. I probably should, but the Peloton is collecting dust in my garage, and I should just during the day, because I'm on the thing anyway. So that's a good idea. I might look.
You know what? It's interesting too. Years ago, especially after I had my kids, I lived across the street from Whole Foods and SoulCycle.
Okay.
In Manhattan. I mean, it was amazing. I could get my workout in, and I could get all the healthy groceries I needed, and it was so convenient. And I was a spinner. That was what I did. I have knee injuries. I'm not a runner. I was a spinner, and I did that, and it was also my stress relief, and it was amazing. The only thing that was a little challenging was that SoulCycle had a lot of celebrities there.
Yeah.
And so I'd be biking next to them, and they'd be I bike next to Christy Turlington every Tuesday for months, and she's so beautiful and graceful, and I was always trying to look like her, and I was never gonna look like her because I'm a foot shorter, and I was how does she get her neck like that while she's riding? but it was great to have these things there, and I did that, and then I moved here, and I went, and I found Clementine Spin Studio in Fairhaven, which was so close, and I went in that day and said I'm moving here, and I need to spin, I need to work, and so I started doing that, and then I had a bike in my basement, and I was always biking, and I really just every morning I would wake up and I would go to a spin class, and I would feel great. And then my body changed a lot, and I stopped being able to handle that intense. Sometimes I would do 2 classes, and then I've started finding myself kind of just drained and depleted.
Yes, it depletes how you think. There are some days where I don't run because I know that I need to reserve that energy for other things I'm doing. And that is a
shift, and that is really a hormonal shift.
Right.
And that's where understanding your hormones and how your body works and your stress response is really important. And again, it's not something that women are taught.
Right.
A lot of the work that I do is education. I also run a group program. The Real Food Reset is our big one, but I also run a program that's called Own Your Hormones. It used to be called F Your Diet. And I thought that was a very clever way to tell people to forget the diet mentality.
Right.
But it's a little much, a little bold. We can't advertise it. We can't promote it. I can't, put it in a magazine.
Right.
Nobody can say that. So it's now called Own Your Hormones. But it's this 6-week program teaching women to change their bodies and their metabolism by understanding their hormones.
Okay.
So when people are amped up and doing high intensity exercise all the time and running and spinning and their bodies aren't changing, there's a reason for that. Usually you're giving yourself a cortisol spike. And when you're giving yourself that spike, you're also telling your body to store fat.
Reserve, yeah, right.
Yeah, and so a lot of times for adult women, to dial back exercise, what do I tell most people? It sounds so boring, and as a runner, you'll feel bored, and most people are like, meh, meh, meh. But the reality is that the best exercise for us is walking. Our bodies are constructed in such a way that we are meant to walk.
Right.
And our ancestors walked long, long distances. We didn't run. We ran if we were being chased by something.
Yeah.
But that was it. We walked. We were nomadic. And that's what's best for our bodies.
Right.
So walking balances your blood pressure. It brings your blood sugar down. It reduces your cortisol. It helps connect you with nature. It sets your circadian rhythm, especially if you're doing it early in the morning and you're getting some sunlight. I mean, I would say if someone's like, what exercise should I do every day? I have 2 hours. I would say go for a 2-hour walk.
Wow.
Again, I'm not saying don't play tennis, and I'm not saying don't run or don't spin, but do those things because you like them.
Yes.
Do those things for an endorphin release. Do them for some, cardiovascular support. But if, people who are like, oh, I've gained some weight, I need to start running. And then what happens to them? They end up with injuries.
Yeah.
Honestly, because their bodies aren't accustomed to them, but also because as we get older, that's just like harder on the system. And so I say walk.
Walk.
Again, people are like, walk, but like put in a great podcast, go with a friend.
Yes.
Like
walk the dog, right?
Walk the dog, like move your body. And even if it's short, a little bit, like whether it's nutritional change or movement change or sleeping, like everyone says like so many people are all or nothing, right? If I can't do it perfectly, I'm not doing it all. But I'm like, what about those 10 minutes? Use those 10 minutes to cut up a vegetable to have with your dinner. Or use those 10 minutes to take your dog for a walk and go walk around the block. Use those 10 minutes to sit down and just breathe.
Right.
Go to bed 10 minutes earlier. There's little changes we can make all the time that don't require, huge subscriptions to gyms and massive vitamin supplements and, going on radical diets. If we always just commit to finding those windows, like how many times do you just scroll on your phone?
Oh, yeah, I say that all the time.
Like,
the
it's
10 minutes
horrible.
that I just wasted on Instagram is 10 minutes I could have been doing something else
Anything
or
else.
whatever.
And all those little changes can add up to health impact.
It's a big change. What about water? How much water?
So rule of thumb, and you've probably heard this, in different ways, but rule of thumb is give or take half your weight in ounces a day.
Okay.
Like if you're doing that, you're pretty much okay. Exercise, obviously, more. It can be an extra 16 ounces. It can be an extra 24. It really depends on how much you're sweating.
Okay.
I believe in electrolytes, but not like pounding I'm not a big Gatorade fan, although I will tell you that it's the only electrolyte my kids will drink.
Okay.
But I'm not a big fan of a lot of things that are packaged or processed. But a lot of times women drink water and say like, I can't drink any more water because I have to go to the bathroom nonstop, and something's wrong with me. And it's not that. It's usually that we're flushing out our electrolytes. So I think it's important to realize that with stress, with movement, with exercise, we do need electrolyte replacement.
Okay.
And shout out to Element, which is my favorite. It's LMNT.
Okay.
It's a great no sugar brand. It's a little bit higher sodium than some of the others because we tend to lose more sodium. It's also really great for women who are adrenally depleted or feeling adrenally fatigued. Usually, the adrenals need sodium, so we do that. But I think that if you're a person who's finding that water's going right through you, it might mean that it's not wet enough, that it needs a little bit more electrolyte.
Right.
But again, depending on your level of activity, you may need more or less. But I'd say as a rule of thumb, like a starting point is half your weight in ounces.
Okay. So interesting. I'd love to have you back on one day to talk about foods and what you cook at home, and just, as I've gotten older and, learned to kind of actually enjoy the downtime of being in the kitchen a little bit versus like hating cooking for so many years, and making even, things that are better for you taste great, right? And that, I think that's why so many chefs, are trim. You see a lot of celebrity chefs on TV and they're all like, they all look great for the most part, and they're, they probably treat food the same way, right? They know how to make a lot of things taste good, and it's not about,
I'll say that a lot of times with our resets, the programs we run, they're meals that you make, and they don't take more than a half an hour, but they're just using different ingredients and fresh ingredients. And sometimes people say, I had no idea that I could make my own food taste that good.
So true, yeah.
Right? There were so many people who say I was a horrible cook, or I had no idea how to cook, but I had no idea that I could just add some basil to this, or I could add this spice and make it actually taste like a delicious meal that my family wants to eat.
Yes.
Versus the same thing. So with a culinary background, I love to talk about food.
Yes, me too.
I use a ton of herbs and spices, a ton of things to make it fresh.
And then something that is satisfying, which is what
absolutely.
we all want.
And when my kids are my toughest critics.
Yes.
People say like your kids must eat so well, and like it's obviously my best intention to always do that, but they're my complainers.
Oh yeah.
So when they're happy with something that I've made, then it like really, I design so many recipes for clients, and a lot of times my test is, does it pass muster with my children?
Yeah, because you're not going to make 3 meals. So
I don't do that at all.
We have a lot of picky eaters, and very just plain like meat and potatoes. So it's a lot of like protein and rice and vegetable or whatever. But yeah, I always get that. Last night I was, when are you going to make the other rice? I'm like, oh my gosh. So now someone's always like mad about what I've made.
Right. There's always someone who's like, oh, I didn't want that.
I know.
But I say that I only make one protein. I only make one primary meal when I'm cooking. I don't make lots of little meals for different people.
Right.
I make different sides or certain things that certain people like, just to make them happy. But a lot of my work with clients is about how to make family dinners and what to do for families and what to do, for yourself. To, a lot of people say, I want to do a reset, but if my family can't eat the food, then is it worth it? And I said, no, this is food for the whole family.
Right.
Like, I'm always designing recipes and meals and even programs for women that women are doing themselves. Mm-hmm. I'm always designing them with the fact that most of them have strap hangers.
Right.
Or most of them even have spouses. And a lot of times on the resets, the spouses also feel great and say, like, I feel so good, I know what I'm doing. And
right. And they had no intention.
Here's the mom in the kitchen, like making this health supportive food, and they're eating these delicious meals, and they're not realizing that in 2 weeks, the hardest part for women is like, then they're like, my husband lost 10 pounds.
Always.
Right.
They stop drinking soda.
Right.
What are your favorite restaurants in Monmouth County?
Well, I will say
Surf Barbecue, right?
I do love Surf Barbecue. We don't get out in Monmouth County as much anymore as I would like, because I'm basically just at every single sports field.
Right.
So it's like, where's the soccer field? Where's the basketball court? Beach Tavern in Monmouth Beach is my favorite restaurant.
Beautiful there.
Especially in the summer. We live in Fairhaven, so our weekends, like our during the school weekends tend to be what is close. So we go to Victory Park Tavern a lot.
Yeah.
We go to Indici. We go to Surf. We kind of do the circuit.
Yep.
That's very close to where we live.
Yeah, and Salt Creek too is great there.
Love Salt Creek.
Yeah, we go there pretty often.
I was just there last week, but it's actually great because we've got 4 or 5 restaurants in a pretty close, good restaurants in a pretty pretty close
Tommy's
distance.
Is there.
Tommy's, we're big Tommy's fans, especially in the summer.
Yeah, and I'm forgetting the name. The sushi place, not Nemo.
Yumi.
The best.
Is delicious.
Oh my gosh, delicious. So good. So good.
We had Over Easy Kitchen open in Fairhaven.
Yeah.
About a year ago, which is great because that's a great lunch spot.
Yes.
I wish I could say I get my kids up for breakfast, but I can't.
And brunch too.
And brunch.
Sunday.
But I tend to do business lunches there, or just like a great place to stop and grab something with a friend. And you mentioned Blonde Shallot. Like during the week. And it's funny, even though I'm a trained chef, I'm working so much as a nutritionist that I don't take any more time for myself than you take for yourself in terms of making lunches, if I can help it. Right. So knowing that somewhere like Blonde Shallot is there to grab and go, and knowing that I'm getting freshly made salads.
Yeah, grab some salads, awesome. And you can have some protein on hand if you want to split it. I
actually usually, for me, because my protein needs are higher, most women's protein needs are higher, and we'll save this for another conversation, but most women's protein needs are higher than they think. I actually always buy their spa tuna or their chicken, and I add it to the salad. I add more.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've done that too, where like I'll make a bunch of chicken in the air fryer or whatever, and then like I just add it throughout the week because the salads are big, so I try to.
The salads are big, and what they're lacking, and not because the salads are lacking anything, but just because what we need more of is protein for the most part, more protein than we think. So my favorite, I grab my favorite salad and I'll add. Or a couple hard-boiled eggs, or something that's convenient.
Yeah, Labodi's too has. I live right by there, so I shop there a lot, and they have great salads too that are pre-made, and I'll grab a bunch and add to that throughout the week. So.
I always say too, like people talk about preparation and I didn't meal prep. Like meal prep doesn't have to be shopping and chopping and dicing. Meal prep is really thinking about what your week looks like, and then deciding what you have on hand. And sometimes that food is assembly. Sometimes it is, okay, I've bought a pre-made salad. Now I'm going to add some things to it. I'm going to change it a little bit. I'm going to divide it in half. I'm going to make 2 meals out of this. That, and just knowing what you have on hand and being able to have something, better for you that you can grab, that's meal prep.
Right.
Meal prep can also be what you don't buy.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to buy 3 pints of ice cream because I know if I do, it's going to be here.
Right.
It's not all about willpower. Sometimes it's really just about what's there, because when you're faced with, when you have few choices, sometimes you have to grab a less suitable alternative.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm a big believer in people having bags of frozen veggies in their house, having extra eggs, making sure you have things. You can always make something.
You always make an omelet, right?
Always make an omelet.
Right.
Buy some meat, keep it frozen. Air fryer is awesome because you can cook things quickly.
Yes, I'm a big fan of the air fryer.
We are too.
We use that a lot. It's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
I'm so glad I was here.
Yeah, you'll have to come back on and we'll talk about all kinds of foods and recipes. And I could go on and on and on for hours about food. Where can everyone find you?
Okay, so Instagram, my Instagram handle is the word eat and the word 80. So eat 80. Same thing, website is eat80.com. We have a sugar detox. I didn't even mention that. We're launching a sugar detox on April 24th.
Okay.
5 days. It's kind of an entry starter program, right? It's a Monday to a Friday. So nobody has to worry about their weekends.
Yeah.
But we're, doing it right at the end of Monmouth County spring break on purpose.
Awesome.
Right? Because whether you go away or don't,
yep,
you're going to probably have some lazier mornings and maybe some dinners out. And by the end, then we're thinking, oh, spring break's over. Now I need to get ready for bare weather season.
I know.
And how do I feel? And so, and a lot of times people just need a quick reset. I like to do these quick 5 days because it doesn't take too much, it's not too much skin off your back.
Right. I love that.
And it's a no added sugar program. So there's some fruit, there's some other things. It's focusing on real meals. My whole goal is always like, see how easy this can be.
Right.
See how, getting through it it's not brutally painful. It's something you'll want to do again. And I have so many repeat customers. So many women come back again and again for either they do every single reset or they do a couple, programs a year. And I say, like, if this were so painful, these people wouldn't keep coming back.
Right.
Like, the fact that people come back and do it again and again means that this is completely sustainable.
Yeah.
So we're launching the sugar detox for 5 days on April 24th. And then our big annual real food reset starts on May 15th.
Okay. Perfect. Love it. And the website is?
The website is eat80.com.
Eat80.com.
And the Instagram handle where you see I post a lot of stories.
You do.
It's
so informative. You're all very captivating, really, valuable information that you're putting out on your Instagram.
That.
So
Thank you.
I always read a lot because you have lots of masses of information, and it's so interesting.
I have a lot to say.
You do, but it's good.
But partially because there aren't a lot of people like me out there, and I really want to get this information in the hands of people who can use it.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone can learn how to eat better. Exactly, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our Springtime Festival is coming up. It's a little over a month away, Sunday, May 7th. We're really excited for that. If you haven't registered now, it's free admission. We have Touch a Truck we've added this year. We have over 75 vendors coming. It's a week before Mother's Day, so come and get your Mother's Day gifts, treat yourself. We also have a big kids zone that we're going to have, again, with some added entertainment. We have a magician coming. We have some surprises that we haven't had before, so we're really excited about our the Monmouth Mom Springtime Festival coming on Sunday, May 7th. If you haven't already checked out our birthday party guide that just came out, we have all kinds of new venues in there, entertainment. So we'll take the guesswork out of planning your kids' birthday party. There's so much out there, and there's so many things to do. So we try to put it all in one spot, so that way
you're a great resource.
Thank you. Our camp guide is also out. If you're like me and have no idea, I know all the things going on, but I don't actually like to. I am like always last minute. I'm like, so I literally sometimes will go on my site and I'm like, so what is going on?
What did I post again?
Because it's all like, when I'm putting it on, I'm not even, it's copy and paste and making sure it's edited properly. So I'm like, what is happening this weekend? Or, what am I doing with my daughter this summer? Still have no clue. But lots of great camps and activities, programs, day camps, all kinds of stuff that you can still sign up for. There's still availability with some of the programs, so definitely check that out. And as always, use the monmouthmoms.com for your go-to resource for all things happening in Monmouth County this spring and summer. Thanks, everyone.